Hello. So I'd like to follow up on some of the ideas that people had today in class for a disjoint set data structure. And I will have you implement parts of them, and then I'll talk about a fancier one, which we'll do together in class on Wednesday. So the first idea that people had, and I think most groups went this direction, was to make a list of lists. So the list is you can think of as a list of all the bubbles. And each bubble is itself a list which holds all the elements that are in that particular bubble. Okay, so list of lists where each inner list corresponds to a bubble. And every element starts off in its own bubble. So what I can say here is, let me make a private variable, self.bubbles. And that's going to be a list. So I'll say for I in range n. I'll say self.bubbles, bubbles dot append, just a list with I in it, and that's it. All right. So I'm going to real quick test this out. It's always very important to test every little thing as you go. Because if I find there's a mistake now, it's much easier because I don't have that much code. And I know that that's the code that I just edited. Okay, so I'm all about incremental testing as I go. So I'm just going to print out the bubbles after I've made them, the initial bubbles. So let's say if I see S is equal to my disjoint set. By the way, tab auto completes. Okay, that was nice. So we put 10 elements in it. There we go. So this is starting off very much like that picture that I showed you. If I go back to the class exercise, it's really looking exactly like this here. Okay, cool. So what I'd like to do is, over time, merge some of these lists together. All right. To that end, it would be nice if maybe I could have a helper method that is internal. It's not part of the API, but it's something I can use in this implementation, which tells me which list this is in. So let's say, we'll say find the index of a particular, or find the index of the bubble that holds a particular value in the list of bubbles. All right. So this is going to be the element we're looking for, and then we return the index of the bubble containing I. Okay. So, I'm going to have to loop through all the bubbles. They're not in any particular order, so this element could be in any of them. All right, so I guess what I'll do is I'll say for k. Now I'm going to do an enumerate, so I'll say for k bubble in enumerate self.bubbles. Now notice I'm using, for my index variable, I'm using k, not I. That would be a bug if I used I, because I is referring to the thing I'm looking for. So let me show you a quick shortcut in list. I mean, I could actually make another loop here. I could say for j lm in enumerate in enumerate bubble. So I could loop through the bubble like this. I could say, or actually I don't even need enumerate. I can just say for each element in the bubble. So I could say is found equals false, but if I is the element, then is found is true. So that'll work. And I guess once it's found, I will set the index to be k. So that would do the trick. But let's improve this code a little bit. So one thing is, in Python, we have, if I make a list like this, 1, 8, 32, whatever, I could loop through to see if an element's there, but I can also use a Python feature. There's a Boolean statement you can write that looks like this. I can say like 3 in x. Okay, so 3 is in x, so that evaluates to true. If I say 4 in x, that should evaluate to false in this example. So that's way faster than looping through and looking for it. So I can say, I could just say replace all this code with if I is in bubble, index equals k. Cool. And there's one thing I can do to make this code even faster, which is even once I find it, this is going to continue to loop through all the bubbles. So I could get lucky and find it in a bubble towards the beginning. To make this a little more efficient, let me actually change this to a while loop. So I'll say while k is less than length of self.bubbles. So I'll say while k is less than self.bubbles and index is -1. So index is -1 if I haven't found it yet. And then of course I have to index it. Okay, so this is like, again, I always encourage people to just, you know, once you have a pretty good idea of the algorithm, go ahead and write some code, and then you can work to incrementally improve the code. So it's all about just coming up with those initial ideas, hashing them out, and then seeing where you can improve them. Okay, so again, I want to incrementally test. So let me make sure that, you know, when I start off with these, it should be the case that when I look for the bubble containing 3, it should be at index 3, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all that. So I know this is a private method, or it's supposed to be, but let me just call it real quick. So I'll make a new disjoint set, and I'll say s.find I 0. Okay, that's at 0. 1 is at 1. Just check it, another 1. Okay, so I spot checked. It seems like this is working. Okay. Now I'm going to leave find up to you in the module, but let me do union because there's a couple things like I want to point out about lists here. So a few groups had this nice idea. When you're doing a union, you can actually use find as a helper method. So what I'll do is I'll say the index of the bubble I should be self.find or self.find I, and then the index of j. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll find the index of the bubble holding each one of these. If the indices are equal, then I don't need to do anything, right? Because you know, they're already in the same bubble. But if they're different, then I need to merge them, merge the two lists. Okay, so what I'll do is I can just decide that it doesn't really matter which list gets absorbed into which list. I'll just decide that you know, the index or the list j will be merged, or that bubble j will be absorbed into bubble containing I. Okay, so the bubble containing j will be absorbed into the bubble containing I. So let me just go ahead and actually I can show you something kind of neat with list in Python. List concatenation is very easy. It's as easy as string concatenation. So if I have a list x that's like 1, 2, 3, and a list of y which is 10, 20, 50, if I say x plus y, that makes a new list, which is the concatenation of both of these. So what I can do is I can say self.bubbles at index idxi plus equals self.bubbles at index idxj. Okay. So that's how I would take all the elements in j's bubble and put them into the I bubble. Okay. Now how do I get, you know, now I've got an extra copy of the j bubble that needs to go away. So I need to somehow remove the old bubble containing j, because everything in that bubble has been moved into the bubble containing I. So let's just think about that for a second. I'm sure you could come up with this if I gave you enough time, but I'll show you kind of a nice way to do this with the list concatenation. So let's say, you know, I had this list z equal to x plus y. Let's say I wanted to remove an element at index idx. So let's say I want to remove the element at index 4. So that would be that 20 there, right? So I could just say z is equal to z from 0 up to but not including 4. Concatenate it to z right after 4 to the end. Okay, so see, that got rid of it. So now I can say, so to remove the old bubble, I say self.bubbles equals self.bubbles from 0 to index j, but not including index j. And then we're going to go 1 after that. Plus 1 until the end. Okay, so again, let me just test this. I'll do the unions that were in this example here. So let me do union 0, 2, union 1, 8, union 8, 7, and then we'll see, do we have bubbles that look like this? Okay, so I said 0, 2, 1, 8, 8, 7. Okay. Oops. Okay. So I'll say s.union 0, 2, 1, 8, and what do I say, 8, 7? Yeah. S.union 8, 7. Okay, so let's go ahead and print out the bubbles. Let's see what they look like. So does that match up with what I had? Let's look and see. So I should have, let's just count them first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bubbles. Every time I do a union, I decrease the number of, assuming that I'm actually merging bubbles, I decrease the number of bubbles by 1 each time. You can say that. So actually the union does do something every time, so I should only have 7 bubbles left if I started with 10. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 looks good. The 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9 are the singletons. I've got a 1, 8, 7 together. I've got a 0, 2 together. That looks perfect. All right, so this seems to be working for the union. So why don't you go ahead and finish doing the find. Okay, and then we'll move on to another idea.